Hello, everyone. So, today we'll be talking about Alzheimer's disease. So, basically, Alzheimer's disease is a brain disorder which slowly destroys memory, thinking skill, and the ability to carry out simple day tasks. The most common cause of dementia is Alzheimer's disease. In patients with Alzheimer's, neurofibrillary tangles and amyloid plaques are seen. Many neurons just stop functioning um, due to neurofibrillary tangles and amyloid plaques, lose connections, and die and start out in hippocampus. Later on, it progresses to or spreads to cerebral cortex, which is responsible for language, reasoning, and social behavior. So, neurofibrillary tangles and beta amyloid plaques in neurons disable signaling, which leads to death or apoptosis of neurons. In Alzheimer's disease, due to apoptosis and death of neurons, the brain starts shrinking, the gyri gets narrower or um, thinner, and sulci, which is grouped between the gyri, gets wider. So with atrophy, the ventricles also get larger. So common causes of Alzheimer's are age-related changes in the brain, genetic mutations, environmental triggers, lifestyle factors, um, and if we look at the image on the right, you can see how normal neuron look like versus neuron in Alzheimer's disease just has little blocks and tangles and stuff like that. And everything that I'm saying can be found on the links down below. So, epidemiology, in 2016, 47 million people were living with Alzheimer's disease. Prevalence, about 6.7 million people, 65 years and older, have Alzheimer's disease. In 2023, 1 in 9 people 54 years and older have Alzheimer's, and two-thirds have or with Alzheimer's are women. So mortality in 1 in 3 seniors die with Alzheimer's. 65 and older survive an average of about 4 to 8 years after they have been diagnosed. And in terms of gender, women usually live longer than men. In women, Alzheimer's disease is linked with loss of hormone estrogen after menopause. So, in terms of region, Western Europe and China have the highest rates of Alzheimer's disease. So, some on the right, you can see ethnic groups that have highest uh, Alzheimer's disease is Black Americans and Asian Americans. Um, and the lowest would be the white Americans. And everything that I'm saying can be found in the links down below. So, signs and symptoms. Um, Memory loss is usually seen, poor judgment. The patient or the person with Alzheimer's loses track of dates, forgets where they are currently, take longer than usual to complete their normal everyday to day task. They start wandering, getting lost, misplacing things, mood changes, personality changes. There's increase in anxiety or aggression, inability to communicate their feelings, weight loss or seizures, loss of bowel and bladder control, and just overall physical decline. So, in terms of diagnosis, evaluation of cognitive skills, physical evaluation, mental status testing, just neuropsychological tests, interviewing friends and family to find out more about the patient and their symptoms. Lab tests are conducted to measure amyloid and tau protein in cerebrospinal fluid. Brain imaging, in terms of brain imaging, um, PET scan detect clusters of amyloid protein or tau tangles, as we can see in the picture in the middle. Um, and MRI imaging just looks at the spaces getting wider or just the brain shrinking overall. And everything I'm saying can be found in the links down below. So, pathophysiology, beta amyloid plaques um, are just so there's in the cell membrane. Um, Amyloid precursor protein is present. So one end of APP is inside of the cell and the other end is outside of the cell. APP is a neuron that helps repair and grow after an injury. So APP normally is a protein that gets used, broken down, and then recycled over time. So when alpha secretase and gamma secretase chop up APP into fragments, the chopped up molecule gets digested due to it being soluble. Um, Neurofibrillary tangles. So in neurofibrillary tangles, it occurs inside of the neuron or the cell. Um, so a tau protein is a protein um, that keeps the microtubules together, and due to the buildup of plaques, kinase is activated, and kinase transferred phosphate group to tau protein, so tau protein attaches to the kinase. So then tau protein changes shapes, stops supporting microtubule, and it gets clumped up with other tau proteins and tangles around. So this tangling leads to neurofibrillary tangles, and then, due to the neurofibrillary tangles, the neurons cannot communicate with each other and die. So, you can see on the image on the upper left hand side of normal neuron versus Alzheimer's disease neuron. You can see there are wires or just tangles inside of the neuron. And amyloid plaques, which disrupt the transferring and communicating of the neurons to each other, and that leads to death of those neurons. So, looking on the lower right hand side, we can see how APP cleavage leads to um, increased amyloid beta, which leads to tau hyperphosphorylation, which leads to neurofibrillary tangles, and then Alzheimer's disease symptoms. Another route is that increased amyloid beta leads to amyloid plaques, which lead to Alzheimer's disease. Another one that we're looking over here is that increased amyloid beta leads to new neurodegeneration, which leads to cholinergic dysfunction that also leads to Alzheimer's disease. So, just three ways where Alzheimer's disease is occurring. And everything I'm saying can be found in the links down below. So, looking at beta amyloid plaques, there are two pathways where breaking down of the amyloid beta is conducted. So, first, or the most normal way, is that non amyloidogenic pathway. In this pathway, alpha and gamma secretase cleave to APP at certain regions and break ATP down into smaller fragments. So once the APP has been chopped up, they can, or the body can easily get rid of the fragments because they're easy to dispose and they're soluble. So they can be digested. Now, the one the most problematic one would be the amyloidogenic pathway, which produces the amyloid beta. So, beta and gamma secretase cleave to APP and chop the APP into certain fragments. Now, this creates amyloid beta monomers, which don't get broken down easily, and highly seen in Alzheimer's disease. So, in breaking down of amyloid beta, phagocytosis by microglial cells is seen. They break down amyloid beta. Receptors or receptor mediated internalization by astrocytes also is seen, or protease neprolysine is also seen. In Alzheimer's, there are increased amount of amyloid beta being produced due to not having enough amyloid beta being broken down. So basically, there's increased amount of amyloid beta production um, and decreased amount of amyloid beta breakdown. So, if amyloid secretase teams up with gamma secretase, this makes the molecule insoluble because it creates a monomer, which is amyloid beta. And amyloid beta is chemically sticky and forms clumps called beta amyloid plaques. So, beta amyloid plaques builds up right outside of the neuron, which makes it impossible for the neuron to signal and talk to each other. And amyloid plaques start immune response and just start inflammation. So, buildup of beta amyloid plaque in between neurons just um, stops signaling and disrupts signaling, and memory is impaired due to not being able to signal. So on the image on at the bottom right hand corner, we can see the APP being cleaved, and it being soluble in non-amyloidogenic processing versus in amyloidogenic APP processing. It's a harder way, and beta amyloid plaques get built up. So, beta amyloid plaques, basically, in the neural synaptic junction, the amyloid beta monomer just aggregate um, into amyloid beta oligomers, which then aggregate into senile plaques. So, the neurotransmitters are blocked by the senile plaques, which leads to blocking of the neural communication overall in the neural synaptic junction. We can see on the image up top of everything that I said, and we can look at the image on the right hand corner, which describes how healthy condition produces just a normal synapse versus abnormal or dysfunctional synapse. So on the image, we can see how there is no oligomer or beta or amyloid beta oligomer formed for the normal synapse, but there is AB or amyloid beta oligomer involved in the dysfunctional synapse, which just overall messes up with the signaling and inhibits um, the neural communication. So acetylcholine and CHAT enzyme. So in the cerebral cortex and hippocampus, CHAT, which is choline acetyltransferase enzyme, is produced in the cholinergic neuron soma. So this travels, so chat travels um, antro- antrograde to exon signal or exon terminal where the acetylcholine is produced. So then acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter which is essential for learning and formation of memory. So in Alzheimer's disease, there's dysfunctional cholinergic neurons, and this kind of decreases choline uptake, decreases acetylcholine release, um, along with a decrease in chat and decrease in nicotinic receptors. So, decrease in chat correlates with the number of senile plaques and the severity of the disease overall. We can look at the actual structure of acetylcholine up top. Um, and on the bottom right hand corner side, we can also see how choline leads to chat, and that kind of leads to acetylcholine being formed. And if everything is normal, the acetylcholine is then um, connected to the neuron or the postsynaptic neuron, and it gets regulated. But in terms of Alzheimer's, there's low levels of acetylcholine involved. So, in terms of treatment, certain medications such as canum and memantine and galantamine is used. The abicanum removes abnormal beta amyloid. Memantine blocks excess glutamate and prevents breakdown of acetylcholine. Um, and galantamine just prevents acetylcholine breakdown, stimulates nicotinic receptors to release the acetylcholine. And overall, you can also take some vitamins, vitamin E, omega-3 fatty acids, um, curcumin, ginkgo, and melatonin. Um, Basically, ginkgo just helps in Alzheimer's disease to perform or help you perform normal day-to-day um, tasks. um, Vitamin E has been seen like an antioxidant that reduces the risk of dementia, so which is why um, vitamin E kind of helps slow down Alzheimer's and etc. Melatonin is usually taken by patients to help them sleep better, since Alzheimer's can kind of disrupt sleep cycle, and it can be hard for patients with Alzheimer's to sleep, um, just overall. So, to lessen the progression of Alzheimer's disease, exercising, eating healthy food, avoiding caffeine, since caffeine can make you feel more, um, makes you have more anxiety or um, aggression. So just listening to music, reading a book, dancing, meditating, those are a good option for you to in your mind to kind of just be interacted with something, and just slow the progression of Alzheimer's down. And everything that I'm saying can be found in the links down below. So just an interactive assessment. Draw the structure of acetylcholine and list the pathways for amyloid beta breakdown. And describe the one main difference in both of the pathways, if you will. So, and here's the answer. We can see the structure of acetylcholine, and the two pathways are amyloidogenic pathway and amyloidogenic pathway. Main difference is that in amyloidogenic pathway, alpha and gamma secretase cleave to APP, but in amyloidogenic pathway, beta and gamma secretase cleave to APP. And that is it. Thank you so much.